So I'm sure a lot of Kanye West fans and hip-hop fans really enjoyed episode 1 of Genius, but I'll be honest with y'all, you ain't seen nothing yet. What's going on, everyone? James here with another real review, and today we're getting into my review and thoughts on Act 2 of the Genius, a Kanye Trilogy documentary that is now streaming on Netflix. Episode 2 is called Purpose. So essentially we go Vision, which is Act 1, Purpose, which is Act 2, and next week's finale, Act 3, Awakening. So for Act 2, of course, we're picking up where we left off, which was Kanye. He just got signed to Roc-A-Fella Records and he's trying to put out his debut album, College Dropout. This episode actually opens up on a really sweet, tender moment. It's 1990 in Oklahoma City, and we start to see, I guess, family. And then we see Kanye West as a child come up to the camera and he's freestyling. And honestly, guys, that's not the only freestyle we get in this episode. So before we get into my review and exactly what I loved, and maybe a couple things I didn't like too much about this episode, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I love talking about movies and TV like this all the time. So if you do too, go ahead and hit that big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on that bell, and hit the thumbs up button if you are a fan of this documentary and just hip hop in general. And hey, get loud down below in the comments and let me know which song from College Dropout is your favorite. Alrighty, y'all, so let's get into my review. And if you did forget, this documentary is directed by Coodie and Chike Ozah, so let's just say they have a big role to play at the end of this episode, but we're not going to start there. We're going to start right from the top. This episode, to me, like I mentioned earlier in this video, is so much better than episode 1. The editing is seamless. I love the vintage grainy feel that still carries over from Act 1 into this week's episode. And honestly, the pacing is really good in this episode, even more so than in episode 1. If you forgot in my review, I mentioned that it kind of got a little slow in the middle of that episode, but here, what feels like an hour and a half for some other movies felt like 20 minutes in this documentary episode. I was so locked in. And I think it's because the story elements here and exactly where we are at in Kanye West's career is just much more interesting. The main draw for this episode really is that near tragic accident in Los Angeles where Kanye West got into a car crash and they essentially had to wire his jaw. And then, you know, we see him actually get his jaw unwired or his teeth unwired. And it's actually kind of gruesome if you kind of get queasy around that stuff. There's an extended sequence at the beginning of this episode that takes you into the dentist office. Now, that is one of the things in this episode that I didn't care for too much, is that we spent a little bit too much time seeing him speak with the dentist and then get his wires taken out, but I guess it does serve an overall purpose for exactly why and how Kanye got the inspiration for Through the Wire. And it's crazy in retrospect to even think that he was struggling to get some of this album to the right people at Roc-A-Fella and get that actual release date, because Kanye's still trying to break that mold. He's not a rapper producer. He wants to be known as a rapper. Yes, a lot of people still know him at this time as a producer, but in the early 2000s, I mean, we see it in this documentary footage. I mean, he can rap. And speaking of rap, you guys, the recording sessions in this episode alone were incredible. One of my favorites was The Bounce, when Kanye dropped bars for Jay-Z, and you can tell Jay-Z was feeling it. It's just so cool to see these hip-hop legends really interact together in the studio and seeing songs come to life little by little by little. And yeah, that's just one instance. The other one to note was the moment where he shows Pharrell Through the Wire in the studio. Actually, first he raps to Pharrell, and Pharrell is, I mean, he's my favorite producer of all time, so he was giving him praise, and when Pharrell gives people praise, that's kind of how you know you made it. And then on the flip side of that, when he finally hits play on Through the Wire, Pharrell literally walks out of the studio and walks back because he's just in disbelief at what he's hearing. So there are a lot of little golden moments like this in this episode, so if you are a fan of seeing how songs come together, the making of albums like College Dropout, which honestly, it is one of the best hip-hop albums of all time, it's just, it's a treat for you. Oh, and I didn't forget about Jamie Foxx, quite arguably one of the most talented people in Hollywood. That Slow Jams recording session was hilarious and also jaw-dropping. I've loved that song for a while, and just seeing how Jamie Foxx and Kanye were interacting in the studio, and then you have the producer there laying down the actual beat itself, and then seeing everything mesh was pretty fun. And honestly, it was satisfying, not only, like I said, for Kanye fans, but just for fans of hip-hop. And when it comes to the progression in and out of scenes, Coodie's narration here was really amazing. This guy's got a knack for narrating things, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, this is the first I've ever heard of him narrating anything, and he should do this more often. It's just so easy to follow along with the story. But eventually we do get to a roadblock in Kanye's career, and this is where, you know, he had to do some convincing at Roc-A-Fella Records because they kept stonewalling him. They wouldn't give him a recording studio budget. So what did Kanye do? He literally went around town and piggybacked off of different artists to not only drop, I guess, bars for them in the studio, but work with them on songs for his album. I mean, that's a lot of grind. And one artist I didn't expect to see here was Ludacris during the Breathe In, Breathe Out session. It was just so fun. It seemed like Luda was in a little bit of a hurry, but the man definitely recognized that Kanye was special at the time. All of these moments really did just give me chills, because something about hip-hop songs coming together, especially when they're songs that are as legendary as songs off College Dropout, it just... oof, it makes me nostalgic, but also it's just incredible. It's like I'm experiencing these songs for the first time all over again. But even with all of this hype surrounding him from his friends and even some respected artists in the game, Roc-A-Fella still didn't commit to a release date for the College Dropout. That wasn't going to stop Kanye West. The man went ahead and sought out Chike Ozah, and they started shooting the College Dropout music video. It was really cool to see that they even had that kind of technology back then, because I'm just assuming that, well, After Effects and programs like that didn't exist in the early 2000s, but they kind of did. At least the foundations for those programs existed. And then we kind of move on to the documentary showcasing his time making mixtapes. I think the I'm Good mixtape with John Legend, you know, little things like that. They're trying to get the hype surrounding him so that he can maybe pressure Roc-A-Fella. But the biggest moment, I would say, was I think it was the music video release party, where he's showcasing this to his friends. Like 200 people showed up, he said. Dame Dash was there, and Dame Dash saw that music video for Through the Wire, saw how everyone loved it, and recognized the quality of his work, and eventually gave that album a release date. Went on to get nominated for 10 Grammys, win a ton of Grammys. He had that legendary speech. I mean, that was a cool speech at the end there when he said, I guess we'll never know. I'm like, you know, it's kind of cool. But one of my biggest issues at the end of this episode was that we really got a lot of things stuffed into one 20-25 minute montage. I kind of wish we spent a little bit more time through the end of this documentary episode. If you needed to add on another 20 minutes to this, another 15 minutes even, I think it would have helped the end of this episode breathe a little bit. But they really did stuff a lot in the third act of this episode, and it made things feel a little rushed. And then eventually we do get into some drama, you guys, because, well, Kanye West, the bigger he got, according to Coodie, the further away he grew from Coodie and Chike Ozah. The Jesus Walks music video was originally shot by Hype Williams, if I'm not mistaken, and then Kanye calls up Coodie and says, I didn't like that. I actually want you to shoot the music video. It's funny because Coodie called that in one of the recording sessions, like, I guess months or weeks prior to them actually shooting the music video. So, of course, the music video is filmed, it releases, everybody is loving it, but the thing is, he's getting closer and closer to the peak of his career, and then we get this tease at the end. Essentially, Act 3 is going to be surrounding a lot of the controversies that Kanye West has really been surrounding himself with and kind of creating on his own, honestly. They tease the TMZ interview, they go ahead and tease what he's done after everything. I'm imagining they're going to showcase some never before seen footage at that concert he did with Drake. I think it was at one of those stadiums. I can't remember the name of the stadium, honestly, don't quote me on that, but I do remember that this was something recently that blew up on social media, on the news, so we're going to see some footage that maybe was previously unreleased to the public. And this is going to be something that's going to challenge me as a viewer, but also as a hip-hop fan, because I mentioned it in episode 1 in my review there, but I'll mention it here in this episode 2 review, but Kanye West the person I don't agree with, so it's going to be a little bit of a struggle in episode 3, but I think that might be the intention behind it all. So Coodie's going to most likely showcase some of the other areas of Kanye's life that maybe we were not necessarily aware of, and if we were aware of, to what degree. And I honestly am wondering how much they're going to include of Kanye and Kim's former relationship and marriage and their family together. But again, outside of the controversies that I'm sure we'll talk more about in Act 3, I still have to give this episode props because it's not only the best of the 2 so far, but this is a genuinely good documentary episode. I loved the behind the scenes. I love the Through the Wire gospel choir moment. I was a big fan of the Donda and Kanye moment here too. It's just amazing to see a parent really hype up their kids so much, and you can just see that she sort of stabilized him at that moment in his career, and she really just told him like go and reach for the stars. So it was beautiful to see. So yes, you guys, if you haven't already watched episode 2, I really recommend diving into it and coming back and letting me know down below in the comments what you thought. Did you love it more than episode 1 just like me, or are you still a bigger fan of week 1? Go ahead and get loud down below and let's have a conversation about it. And hey, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, guys, because yes, I'm coming back next week and we're talking the final episode here in the Genius documentary. It's Act 3 Awakening. So, well, either we're gonna get awakened or they're going to showcase Kanye West getting awakened, because that tease at the end, guys, whew, it was a lot to take in. I don't think I breathed once. So there you have it, you guys. That's my real review of Act 2 Purpose. Again, it's a little over an hour long, but you don't feel it. This was a very good episode of television. Alrighty, guys. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening. And I might go listen to College Dropout now. Man, Through the Wire. It's a classic.